So, Jordan Willis has checked himself into rehab. This is in Kansas City. The 3 men who died in Jordan Willis's backyard in the early hours of January the 8th. And Jordan Willis, whose house it was, didn't notice that 3 men, David Harrington, Ricky Johnson, and Clayton McGeeney, were there in his backyard. David apparently was found sitting in a lawn chair on the porch. But Jordan Willis checking himself into rehab basically tells me everything I need to know about what went down. They took something, perhaps something laced with something. But the news are reporting this. Jordan Willis is facing his addiction head on, with a source close to his family calling the freezing deaths of 3 men in his backyard an enormous, heartbreaking wake-up call. Jordan recognised that he had a problem with addiction. He immediately checked himself into rehab after vacating his home and putting his things into storage. So that explains the U-Haul. A neighbour told Fox News Digital on Tuesday that they saw 2 of the now deceased men arrive at Willis's house with 2 30-packs of beer that night. Good Lord. So 60 cans of beer between the 5 of them. So there was another man there, Alex Lee, who left the house around 11 p.m. Now, we've heard that he left about midnight. It's also been said that the 3 men, David, Ricky and Clayton, were alive between 1 and 2 a.m. Were they really tanked up on the beers? And maybe they went out to have a little smoke of something and it was laced, maybe with fentanyl. Alex's lawyer has maintained all along that Alex left, they were watching Jeopardy, and he has absolutely nothing to do with this. Now, he does have a history with drugs, but maybe, let's just imagine the scenario that he left because he wanted to stay clean and they were deciding to smoke something, perhaps. But Alex's lawyer says he doesn't know what happened. We don't know anything until the toxicology reports come back, if they show anything. And I think they will. I really think they will. People have asked me whether Jordan Willis will have been drug tested. Possibly. You know, he was cuffed and detained, but there's been no charges. They don't believe that the case is one of homicide. It's 100% not being investigated as a homicide, the Kansas City PD have said. But I don't know the answer as to whether Jordan Willis was drug tested. We've also heard conflicting stories about Jordan Willis's 2 dogs. They were there and then they weren't there. But most accounts seem to be that the dogs were at Willis's dad's house, and for whatever reason, they'd gone on a little vacation, and he had no reason to go outside. But if he was under the influence, you know, knocking back the beers and maybe taking something, that explains why he slept for 2 days, doesn't it? The 3 guys who went outside for whatever reason, maybe they went outside to smoke. And if it's a fentanyl-laced thing, they probably would have passed out right where they were. So David in the chair, and then the 2 others maybe fell to the floor. They're all under the influence at the same time. They can't help each other. They can't help themselves. And then you've got the added problem of the cold. So if they're passed out, then they are going to get hypothermia. You know, it could be that the drug killed them before the hypothermia set in. That cold is going to exacerbate the influence, the effects of a drug like fentanyl. And they just probably were unconscious and maybe didn't wake up. I mean, if it's any consolation whatsoever, they probably didn't suffer. And sadly, they passed away like that. I mean, I'd like to know what they collected from the house. You know, things like drug paraphernalia, beer glasses, cigarette butts, all of that stuff needs to be in police hands. Another question that people have asked me is about a search warrant. So it says here, Willis voluntarily allowed police to search his home on the evening of January the 9th, according to the Kansas City Police Department. Ross Nigro, an attorney retained by the family of Ricky Johnson, told Fox News Digital that a second search was carried out with a warrant on January the 11th. And they asked Ricky Johnson and David Harrington's parents for their phone passwords in an effort to piece together their last moments alive. The concerning thing, though, if they were smoking something like marijuana and it was really fentanyl or it was laced with fentanyl, then other people are at risk, aren't they? Where did that drug come from? Where did they get it from? You know, the police really will be wanting to piece together and backtrack to see if they can work out where they got those drugs from. Now, you've got to remember that there are 2 people alive who might be able to answer that question. Jordan Willis and Alex Weimer Lee. So hopefully they're fully cooperative and tell the truth, even if it implicates them, one of them or both of them, in bringing those drugs in that ultimately ended the lives of David, Ricky and Clayton. And it says here, in all likelihood, the Kansas City Police Department is trying to determine whether drugs were sold or given to any of the men to establish a chain of possession, attorney and retired NYPD Inspector Robert Morrow said in an interview last week. That process may further delay the investigation. Well, that will be the investigation. You know, that's the crime, isn't it? A source close to Jordan Willis's family told Fox News Digital that he'd remained in Kansas City to care for his father, who has mid-stage Alzheimer's. The deaths of his friends and the wild speculation surrounding the case left Willis depressed and devastated. So he's got his dad looking after 2 dogs and he's got Alzheimer's. Well, that's a recipe for disaster. I mean, look, if he genuinely had nothing to do with it, he genuinely was under the influence of the drugs that killed his friends, and he had nothing to do with bringing those drugs in. He was just consuming. I do feel sorry for the guy. Apparently the labs in Kansas City are busy. Like, average is 4 to 6 weeks for a tox report to come back, but they are saying that it might take 6 to 8 weeks. And maybe full autopsy reports will not be released for another 10 to 12 weeks. That's just what this report is saying, but yeah, okay. All right, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.